So who would have thought that maybe the poker machine debate was going to be at the heart of the future of the government? I guess it was part of the agreement at the time, but were we paying enough attention?
Well, this is part of the problem the government now faces. Its agenda is not only littered with the things it wants to do, its agenda is littered with the things that the people who put it in government want it to do. And so it's got to try and manage both things. And it's quite clearly this is not something the government would have chosen to have to act on, but it's being forced to by an independent because its very existence is at stake.
And it's got a lot of people excited. Here's Andrew Wilkie on Meet the Press this morning.
This most recent threat was different. It came on the day that the poker machine industry launched its $20 million campaign against me and the government, the day that I also received an email threatening me with so-called compromising photos, the day that the media started to trawl over my done-true past. There was clearly, or is clearly, a campaign being waged against me. Understandably, you know, if you want to overturn poker machine reform, you run an advertising campaign, you lobby politicians and you try and destroy Andrew Wilkie.
So he thinks it's a pretty rough fight.
And it's all about him. I think that's pretty obvious. Look, it is a rough fight, but there's absolutely no evidence that the poker machine industry, clubs and pubs were involved in bringing up Andrew Wilkie's past. A couple of things. One is, every time I hear someone say something's un-Australian, I immediately think, oh, they've run out of real argument and they're just tossing that up. And secondly, I think there are much better ways of circulating, $4 to $5 billion, whatever the figure is, throughout local communities than putting through poker machines first. You know, spend them at the high street through small business. Much better for the community than being processed through clubs. Politically, though, the government is in for a huge fight with Western Sydney and similar environs, where these big clubs, Penrith Panthers, Rooty Hill, RSL, are extremely important and do a very good job for local communities, for entertainment, social gatherings, etc. Secondly, it's a view that Julia Gillard will be doing this not because it's good policy, but because she's being told to by a single independent, well, two, one in the upper house, one in the lower house. Yeah. And that really reflects badly on the government if that comes up.
And she has to win it.
Well, I think, Barry, this shows what happens when you have weak and unstable minority government. You don't get to set all the agenda. It comes out of left field from some independent in Hobart. As well, because you've had these fights and you've lost on some, such as the big mining tax, you've caved in, and you're a weak and unstable government, almost by definition minority, all the vested interest groups know out there that you can be done over. So you get yourself into a dynamic where you're not even setting the agenda and you have to fight other people's fights just to stay in government. I think the poker issue itself, as a productivity commission, has done a thorough report on all this. There is an area of problem gambling. Clubs and hotels have always had sort of this special regulatory and tax concessions. They're struggling. They're fighting to keep the ability to be able to make money off of problem gambling. The Wilkie idea of a pre-commitment to gamble seems like a reasonable idea. There's a parliamentary committee. What they should do, I think, is have a trial somewhere. Let's get some evidence-based policy. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, as an idea, it may be a good one. I think the difficulty is the cost. If you needed to insert the technology into these machines, it could be as high as $3 billion.
Well, that's what they say. But let's have a trial somewhere in a smaller area. You know, there's some issues to do with having a trial, but
where there's only one club of non-alternatives.
Sure. It's got to be careful about how you set it up. But then you can get the costs, and you can see if it does do something to problem gambling.
That might get the government through the next election. It'd be a good delaying tactic, if nothing else.
I think they're on a big... most Australians would think you've got to do something about problem gambling, but the clubs are obviously extremely powerful. I think the issue is that gambling is now financing all sorts of quasi-community type activities all through, say, the western suburbs of Sydney. That may be not a healthy thing, but that's the political reality.
We're underestimating, though, the backlash, because Graham Richardson talks about every pub and club in the regions could become a campaign office for the opposition.
Yeah, precisely. And we've seen how effective Tony Abbott can be on just about any issue the government's attempted, just going around and stirring up doubts and concerns. Can you imagine him popping into the Penrith RSL, where he went during the election campaign, old friends there, and just happening to talk about poker machines? He wouldn't have to really try, just have to turn up.
And they're already pitching that campaign at the people who don't have a problem as gamblers who like to gamble occasionally and don't like the idea of having a restriction put on what they spend at any given time. They say, oh, why only spend $100 every few months? What's my problem? You know, this ad with the licence to gamble and licence to punt and things like that. That's exactly who they're pitching at. They're trying to divide the community and raise angst about this whole idea.